positions, they make you keep your feet flat on the floor, but the concept is exactly the same thing. So we'll go through this in a minute. And again, the goal with your feet, ironically, is to actually have your in a point where you can put your feet on the floor so your pelvis can actually rotate round and give yourself more room to get your shoulder blades down and back. So the next point on the scapular part will directly be affected by how much your legs are moving around. If your legs are completely flat on the bench, your pelvis is rotated forwards because you're relaxed, you can't get your shoulder down and back that far. If your pelvis is rotated out of the way, you can get a lot bigger arch in your back. And again, like I said earlier, the goal is to get that bar path as short as you possibly can. If your spine can round more, in theory, bar path gets shorter, it gets easier to do. All right. So, for example, a lot of people when they're benching, they think about here upwards. So they'll be here thinking, right, nice and tight, but their feet are always really relaxed the whole time. So what you start thinking about is bringing your feet underneath you and then trying to get your heels to the floor. That now means you're not doing anything, but I'm now super tight throughout my entire legs. I'm now stable from here all the way down to the floor. So I'm not asking you to breathe right underneath as you're bent in half. Just to the point where if you watch my hips, rather than being completely relaxed on the bench, when I push my heels down to the floor, my legs now rotate round, and I'm now super tight from here all the way through down. So not only can I feel my legs now doing their job, but also my pelvis is now out of the way, so I can now get an even bigger arch in my shoulder blades, is the idea. So I'm not doing a lot, but my legs are getting to a point where they're super tight. Basically, I should feel, hence I've written down, you should actually feel your legs be tight the whole way through. If you feel your hip flexors doing their job, your quads doing their job, it means your legs are actually on and supporting you throughout the entire thing. All right. So again, this is kind of, as you can probably read, the setup over there. That will be a big factor in how you set up in a minute anyway. But yeah, that's the whole point of your legs, in my opinion anyway, in a bent is to be tight the whole way through. Okay, hence why I've written the phrase, you want to actually feel your legs. A lot of people that I've shown the setup to and made them do it, they've gone, fucking my legs are doing that. And that's what you feel like. What you feel like your legs are actually tight and doing their job. Tightness means you're actually on, tightness means you're actually working, doing their job. All right, and then this is probably arguably the most important one that people don't do enough of is your scapula. If you know what scapula means, basically it means your shoulder blade, basically. You've probably heard the phrase down and back, all that sort of stuff to keep yourself stable before. Bench press is arguably the most important one to do that for. Your shoulder will be in the strongest and safe position when it's down and back and out. But basically, you want your shoulder joint as open as you possibly can have it. If your shoulder blade is closed, at some point your shoulder's not going to like move around too much. Again, like anything else in the world, injuries only happen most of the time when your joints start moving when under heavy load. Look at like a deadlift as a prime example. If your spine's moving throughout a deadlift, that's when injuries come. They don't come from the spine staying still, they come from the spine starts moving. Shoulder joint's exactly the same. If you get your shoulder blade down and still, your joint isn't actually going to move the whole way through. If your shoulder blade's always moving throughout head motion, A, you're really unstable, so it's going to make it really hard to get heavier, but also B, you're asking for an injury at some point. Maybe not right away, but over time your body's not going to like your shoulder moving throughout the entire bench press. Alright, so, and again, this again comes directly down to the question of should I be arching or not? Technically you are arching, but you haven't gone into it and actively thought, right, I'm going to arch as much as I can. If you lay down, you can still have a terrible posture and arch as much as you can. That's kind of counterintuitive. So what I'm going to try and get you to do is think of shoulder blades down and back as hard as you can. What will happen is your spine will extend, but it doesn't mean you're actively thinking about, I need to arch as much as I possibly can. Alright, so what I want everyone to start thinking about when you're laying down is how far can you get your shoulder blades down? You can literally do it sat down now. So you literally sit down and think, right, shoulder blades down and back as hard as you can. What happens to your spine? It obviously rounds, but you haven't gone into it and thought, right, I need to arch as much as I possibly can. So again, this is another big part of this as well. People are really good at getting in this position. What happens is the bar, when you start pressing away from you, your shoulder blades start to move. So for example, what they'll do is they'll set up really great. They'll lay down, shoulder blade down and back nice and tight. They're about to press the bar. What happens is they'll keep it tight as it hits their chest, absolutely fine. As they press, the shoulder blades start following them up where they're going to go. And again, as always, as soon as you start moving your shoulder blades forward, you've one, lost your arch, so the bar path gets longer, but also you're again in a weaker and a less stable position. So ideally, when you're here or when you're about to unrack it, think right, shoulder blades down as tight as you can, and when you're doing your pressing, even when you press away from you, think about keeping your shoulder blade down and back the whole time. So nothing's moving from A to B. That's the goal with scapular. It's not just about getting set up in the right spot. The hardest part of bench press obviously is getting that bar from your chest to the top. If your what's what we're looking for? If your base falls apart in the hardest part, it's kind of irrelevant. Setup can be absolutely great, but as soon as that bar hits your chest, if your chest collapses, your setup is completely pointless. All right, so yeah, practice that more than anything else. And then like I said, this all goes down to the whole point of making the bar path as short as you possibly can. The bigger your arch can be, the shorter the bar's got to travel, and the better your setup is going to be. And in theory, the heavier weight you'll be able to lift in the first place. Like I said, this again, it comes down to mobility as well. Though, like obviously, some people have got a really flexible spine; they can do a really big arch and get a really short bar path. Some people have to work at getting to that point. But again, as long as you can go into that and say, right, my spine is round as much as I can, my feet underneath as far as I can go, that's your setup right now. Hence why I said earlier, the setup I've written down, yes, you may look a little bit different when you get into it, but as long as you're doing what is right for you right now, you'll find the more you do this, the bigger your arch will get, the more comfortable you get getting it. Because I guarantee you, when you first try this, your lower back's going to think, fuck, that was horrible. But again, that's a practice point more than anything else. And again, that's only going to get better, as always, the more you expose yourself to be in that position in the first place. All right? And then, probably one I get questioned about the most is grip. So, I've always used a phrase, I think I've told quite a few of this anyway. The phrase bending the bar is a really easy way of me saying quite a few confusing words really simply. So for example, all that basically means is that when I'm holding the bar, all I'm actively trying to do is think of right, I'm trying to bend the bar in half the whole time. All it does is one, it gets you get your shoulder blade down and back because you're bending the bar in half, but it also gets your elbows tucked right into your side rather than letting them flare out at the top. So all you're gonna think about is when you rack the bar, start at the top, think about bending your bar in half. So when you come down, your shoulder down back and your elbows are tucked more into your side rather than flared out right up here. So what I want you to always make sure is your elbows always stay away from this 90-degree angle up here. The closer you get to 90 degrees, the shoulder joints get closer and closer together. And again, as you all know by now, if your bones start rubbing together over a long period of time, obviously it's going to suck at some point. So ideally, if you can stay away from that 90 degree angle, that's the most important thing. Like, you can go relatively close if you want to, but the biggest thing is that 90 degree angle is the one you want to avoid absolute most. And again, like I said to you, if you look at a bar path site of you, quite a few actually in the room actually on Saturday, found the bar hitting you quite high on your chest up here. The distance to travel from here to the shoulder part of my chest is a big difference. If I go down all the way down to my highest part of my chest down here, I can't even get down that far. If I'm here, my shoulder is aiming for the highest part, it's significantly less distance than traveling straight down over here. And again, it also, injury risk is spotting you, fucking terrifying. So, yeah, aim for the highest part would be lovely. All right, so yeah, anyway, so yeah, like I said, that's one of the biggest things with grip, is just think about bending the bar in half the whole way down, and it will sort quite a few things out along the way. And again, like I said, this is kind of where it depends on person to person where your grip will be, will depend on kind of where your joints stack up over the bottom. So, for example, the wider you, in theory anyway, the wider you go, the shorter the bar path will be. If I go really close together, the bar's got to travel a long way to get from A to B. If I go super wide apart, the bar's obviously going to go less distance from my chest to the bar. But there's a caveat to that. It's the same as squatting. Technically speaking, the wider you go from the squat, the distance gets shorter to the bottom. Doesn't mean it's a good squat for everyone to go for in the first place. Bench press grip is exactly the same. So you're going to go as wide as your grip can tolerate, but your shoulder likes doing it in the first place. So for example, if you're laying down, if I'm going super wide apart, like technically speaking, I can go right out here, which is terrifying, but we'll do it anyway. So when you're out here, that technically distance is going to be really, really small from A to B, obviously. But what it means is when I get to the bottom, as you probably all can see, my elbows now aren't stacked over my wrists anymore. So for me, I know it's too wide for me. If I go a little close together, if I go my normal grip, which is far a bit different, we'll start with that. When I'm here, when I get to the bottom, my joints and elbows are now pointing in the right direction the whole time. So you're only going to figure out what grip's right for you when you actually try it in the first. When you're at the bottom, you basically make sure that your elbow and your wrist are in one line the whole way through, but you're not going to know that until you try your grip for the bar. Some of you will find actually being close together feels more comfortable for you, which is really okay. The only one I don't want you to do is get something in 90 degree angle. Everything else in between that point, again, this is again, like I said earlier about the racking height, learn these numbers, learn your grip on the bar. Amount of people I've got to remind them that hands are uneven is insanity. Like in your head, just think about, right, where's nearly on the bar? I know my middle finger on that powering right there is right for me. If you know, little finger on there, or one thumb width from that bar right there, figure out what's right for you and make it the same every bench press you do, whether it's Larsen press, whether it's pause, whatever it might be, treat it exactly the same. You wouldn't squat differently because you did a pause squat. Don't do the same thing on here. Treat it the same way every single time. Learn your grip, learn your racking height so you can make every rep you do exactly the same. And again, grip wise, like I said, genuinely, if you're doing a set of like 60 kilo bench press, for example, do one set of 2 or 3 with a close grip to normal. Feels horrible, don't do that. Go back to normal, then go wider again, and find one that feels comfortable for you. Set up exactly the same way, and you'll figure out what grip is right for you in the first place. Make sense? Yeah? Fine, cool. And then, like I said, the ideal angle for the majority of people is like 60-ish degrees. Look at a press up, for example. If you do a good press up, you wouldn't put your elbows tucked in, and you certainly wouldn't have your elbows right up here. You pick somewhere in between the two. It's exactly the same thing with this. The reason you do that is because it's a strong position for a press up. Press up, if you turn yourself over, is literally the same thing as that. You're pressing yourself that way, which is exactly what you're doing down there. Don't approach it differently. It's literally the same concept. All right? And then, right, this is quite a hard one to talk about. We'll do it anyway. I think I've done it with you, Jan. I think you're the only one who actually have. Yeah. So anyway, right. And Steve actually as well. So yeah, bar sits on the biggest part of your palm. A lot of people do this, and people always say to me, "Oh, I've got a really sore wrist from bench pressing." Usually means your wrist is being cranked back way further than it needs to be. So what people do is, when they take the bar off the rack, the bar's sitting along their fingertips. So they'll be starting here, unrack the bar, and the bar's sat right back here. Which obviously means, again, when it's a light bar, it doesn't matter, heavier this gets, that bar's going to get pulled towards my face, which again is terrifying, but more importantly, your wrist gets bent right back as far as you can. Again, light bar doesn't matter. As you all found out, the heavier this gets when your bar starts cranking back this way, again, like I said to you earlier about efficiency, your joints need to line up. That bar now is lined up with not a single joint in my body. It's only lined up with my fingertip, which is not ideal. So all you're going to do, as weird as this sounds, you're going to turn your hands over so the bar sits on the biggest part of your palm the whole way through. Right here, big part of your palm, right over your ulnar and your body, basically the strongest part of your wrist. So all you're going to do is when you take it sounds really weird doing it, it feels weird to start off with. All you're going to do is hold the bar, turn your hands around so the bar's now sat diagonally across your palm. All you're going to do, grab hold of the bar and then try and twist the bar in half as hard as you can. As you can see, I'm basically creating as much torque in my hand as I possibly can, so my hand's now doing this job. It also means when I rack it, the bar's now sat on a big part of my palm. As you probably can see on that angle, it's now over my wrist, not cranked back over here. I want it to be sat on the biggest part of my palm the whole way through. So again, this is going to take some really weird practice, because again, it feels very counterintuitive, because you kind of do that and you go, well, my elbows are flared up now, it's kind of a waste of fucking time. All you're going to do, grab the bar, hold it, take it off, twist your palm around like you're trying as hard as you can. You can still do the same thing, but I promise you, the heavier this gets, your wrist won't hurt, for one, but it also means that your joints are now going to stack up over each other. It's a really weird thing to practice, and it'll feel really, really fucking weird to start off with, but it's a really big one. If any of you found your wrist getting a little bit ropey on Saturday or whenever you did it, that's exactly why. Your wrist is being cranked back farther than it likes to be. It's a little, again, I'm not expecting you to do that every single rep, because it does take a bit of practice to do it with, but if you just remember, the bar needs to sit on your biggest part of your palm, that's enough for me. The torquey bit, the whole twisting around, can get a little bit confusing after a while, but just think about, make sure that bar sits here, not around your fingertips for me instead. Again, like I said earlier, efficiency is the goal with bench press. If your joints can stack up over each other, you'll always be better off. All right? Fine. Cool. Right. And then, extras. So, breathing. Breathing's a little bit different. There's probably a very logical reason as to why when it comes to benching, deadlifting, and squatting. Obviously, when I told you to bench and when I told you to deadlift and squat, I said every single person in the room, you're taking a big breath in, holding your breath throughout one lift, going to the top and then breathing out and doing it again. Make sense? Does that before? Hopefully you've always done that trial at some point. So you obviously do deadlift, you go to the bottom, big breath in, brace against your belt or no belt, whatever you're doing, and do your lift, breathe out the bottom and reset yourself every single time. Bench press is kind of the opposite to that to a certain degree. The breathing concept is exactly the same, but you're going to hold your breath for every single rep you do. As in, you're going to hold it for as long as you possibly can is the idea. Obviously, you don't do that deadlifting and squatting, because it would be obviously a car crash. So you're set at 10, hold your breath the entire way through. Everyone will pass out and it'll just be an absolute disaster. So don't do this for deadlifting and squatting, please. Yeah, just dominoes is not what I want to see in here, ideally. But anyway, so when it comes to benching, your breath hold and how you breathe in is also another factor as to how big of an arch you get. If you all sit there right now, as upright as you can for me, take a massive breath in. What happens to your spine? It goes like that. A massive part of inhalation is your spine extending. If you're staying here and you go, onto your spine, it extends that way. So if you do the opposite, if you just breathe out as the hardest part happens, what happens? Your spine sinks. And again, your arch goes, efficiency. So yeah, it all goes hand in hand. Hence why the big phrase at the beginning, force couple relationship, everything works together is the idea. So if you breathe in, and your arch is really, really great, as you get your chest, you breathe out, your spine sinks, and everything's just completely out of the room, is the idea. So, for example, all I'm going to do, have you at the bottom, get yourself set up nice and tight. You're going to take the bar off the rack, massive breath in, hold your breath for at least a couple of reps, depending on how many you're doing. All right, so again, if you imagine, if I'm at the top, if I go breathe in, here, get here, breathe out, it's really hard to get back to the same good arch you got to a second ago when you already breathed out. Breathed out? Whatever, anyway. Well, when you breathe out at some point, it basically will mean your spine will start to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Again, the heavier this gets, you can't afford for your spine to move even slightly. So ideally, if you've got a set of 2, 3, or 4, see if you can do it on one breath. Massive breath in, hold your breath, get a couple reps done. If you need to take a second and then breathe out and do it again, absolutely fine. Obviously, don't conk out doing this. But ideally, if you can do it and get a few reps in while your spine is still as extended as you possibly can get it, that'll be a really good thing for you to practice doing in the first place. Again, I know it sounds a bit almost counterintuitive to breathe and hold your breath the entire way through, but like I said a minute ago, this whole concept works better when everything is done in unison is kind of the idea. So breath is a huge part of that as well. And again, as you know, guys know, if you've done breathing properly on deadlifting squatting, it makes a huge difference bracing against it. Benching is exactly the same. If your breath is good and holding you still, stability is coming from the rest of the time. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah? It's a weird one to practice again, like the wrist one, a bit weird, but here we go. Anyway, right. Wrist wraps, are they necessary? Has anyone seen or used them before?
Yes, but not for this.
Not for this. Yeah, I mean wrist wraps in you wrap around your wrist and you keep your wrist still.
Oh, no.
Fine. So, people ask me about this before anyway, I'll bring it up anyway. Wrist wraps, are they necessary? Absolutely not necessary, but they are a very good way of getting heavy. If the wrist wants to start to move, it's a very good way of keeping your wrist still. So again, where are mine? Oh, I'll get in there. So when it comes to wrist wrapping, basically, the goal of the tip, I'm going to get them. It's easy, isn't it? I'll show you. It's easy to show you, Ron, tell you.
Why is everyone looking at me?
Waiting for a quick demo.
I know I messaged him last night. I was like, "You're in for the seminar." I was like, "Am I still coming in to do weekend warrior?" He was like, "You're teaching the seminar." I was like, "Don't you dare put me that position." I'm going to watch. Surprised he hasn't dragged anyone up for a demo yet.
It'll happen.
It'll happen, won't it?
Well done, you.
You're first, actually.
Why me?
So, these, anyone seen these before?
Closest.
No.
I've seen these. So these wrist wraps, basically. So these are, very manly, as you can tell, these are basically a way of keeping your wrists even still than you already can. So for example, if you're still doing your bench properly, your grip's still good, but your wrist still feels a little bit weak and ropey, same as using straps for a deadlift. At some point your grip's going to get a bit ropey and you can't help that happening. Wrist might be the same problem. When you get heavy bench pressing wise, it kind of becomes, necessities is a bit of a strong word I think, but they do help a lot when it gets heavy. Anyway, so what you're going to do with these is, people always fuck these up basically. What they'll do is people will wear them, put them around, they'll tie them super duper low on their wrist, because it makes sense, wrist wraps, put it on the wrist. What they'll do, the whole point of wrist wrap is to do what? Keep your wrist still.
So that's not on your list.
It's just literally, it's accessory. It looks great, but it does absolutely fuck all. So yeah, that is an absolute waste of time. So, when you do wrist wraps, if you ever do get some and you want to borrow them, and mine are always in here somewhere, all you're basically going to do is always wrap it about halfway up your hand and your wrist. So keep it still, when I wrap them around, should be really fucking tight as well. So it should be tight enough. So, now, that's it. That's all I can do. That's all I can move it around by. So now, when I try and crank backwards, I can't get it back any further than that. Even if I wanted to, I literally can't get it back further than that. That's what it should be feel. And it should be tight enough, you have to take it off in every single set. If you can keep them on for your entire workout, they are nowhere near tight enough. And if they move your wrists around, also can be waste time. They may look, well, they don't look great, but if they look great, fine, but that's not the point. The goal obviously is to be tight enough, wrists can stay still. They should be tight enough, so you should have to take them off between every single set. So if you ever want to try them, mine are always in there, help yourself. But they are very handy when your bench gets heavy, they get a very nice addition to keeping your wrists even more still than they should already be. All right? Oh, nothing in that.
Oh.
Nothing in it, but fine. Good. Right. So, the next thing, I do actually, we'll do the setup now and we'll do Q&A at the end. So, full setup. So this is probably arguably the most important part, because now what you're going to try and do is put it all together is the idea. And again, the whole point of, it's same with deadlifting, same with squatting, if your setup is good, the chances of you fucking it up are a lot smaller. If your setup is a little bit ropey, there's going to be points where it's going to fall apart. And again, as I said to you guys on strength test as well, if your error is done with a light bar, the margin of error is a lot bigger. The heavier this gets, one little mistake can cost you 5-10 kilos when it gets heavy. For squats, for example, if you lean forward slightly on a light squat, you can save that, won't even notice it. If you lean forward slightly on a heavy squat, it's just not going to go anywhere. Deadlift's the same, it's all sorts of stuff. So yeah, anyway, so I've taught this to quite a few of you. Basically, what you're going to do is every single person is going to start off in exactly the same spot, do exactly that list on that board, and then basically what will happen is you'll all end up in a little bit of a different spot, but you're all doing exactly the same thing. So what you're going to do is, again, you should all know your rack height, hopefully. All you're going to do, ironically, you're going to lay down and you're going to start miles behind the bar. The reason why is I wouldn't have you get a big arch in your back. What are you going to do? You're going to bring your feet up so they're flat on the floor still, they're going to stay where they are. All I'm going to try and actively do now is keep my heels down. They won't stay down, I'm going to try and keep them down. All I'm going to do, slide myself down the bench, heels stay down, heels stay down, heels stay down. So when I hit the bench now, that now is as tight as I possibly can get, is the idea. So now, my heels are not on the floor, I'm thinking down, and that's now tight from A to B. All right, and then as I'm sliding down as well, I'm going to think, right, get my spine as rounded as I possibly can. So now, when I'm set up from here all the way through to my feet, I'm as tight as I possibly can be. All right, all I'm going to do is, again, I should know my grip right now. All I'm going to do is unrack the bar, take a massive breath in, and then think about bending the bar in half, aiming for the highest part of my chest, and then pressing it straight back to my shoulders. So I'm not going down, aiming for over here. I'm not going here straight down to my chest. I'm aiming for bending the bar in half, aiming for the highest part of my chest, and then pressing it back to the start. When you're done with it, it should only fall about that far, and you know your rack height is the right height. And if every single person does that setup, they will arguably be in the best setup you can be in. All right? Does that make sense? Yeah? I'll do it again in a second. But yeah, like I said, the goal obviously is just, it's a bit different deadlifting in the sense that I want you all to kind of follow the same sort of routine, but that little routine on that board, if you start from there and do every single one the same, you'll get better at doing it, obviously. But the goal, obviously, is if you get your feet further underneath you next time, your spine can get a bigger arch. Going forward, your bench press will be a lot better off. So I'll do it one more time. So all you're going to do, lay it down, I'll do it in hopefully fullish speed now. So start behind the bar, feet underneath, find your grip first of all. So you don't have to muck around and try and change it around. The fucking bar. All you're going to do, slide yourself down, feet stay still, shoulder blades down, and back as tight as I can be. I'm going to do a big breath in. That's it. That's simple.
When I do that, when I do that,
Yeah.
I'm thinking where my eyes are with the bar,
Yeah. Okay, fine. So yeah, when it comes to that, again,
as opposed to my legs and.
okay, so big, and this is
Yeah.
going to be a bit of a try and error thing as well.
Yeah.
So you basically want to have a point where, again, it all depends on how mobile you are. If your spine barely rounds, you won't need to go back as far. If you've got good ability, you have to go back further. Like for example, if I can barely round my spine, I don't need to go all the way back here. I can start here, it'll be a little round, and I'm good to go. Depending on who you are, if you've got good ability, if you start right back here, you might be able to do a big horrible arch and then be in the same spot. So it will very much depend on person to person more than anything else. But basically you want to get to a point where, again, like I said earlier, the unracking height comes with deficiency again. If I start doing a big arch with a great setup, I'm all the way down here, there's no way on earth, when that gets heavy, I'm taking that off, that rack. If that's a 100 kilo barbell, I'm not moving that from there to there. So what you've got to do is you've got to figure out a point where you can still get into your big arch. When you hit the bench, you're eye level, so when you unrack it, you've only got to move the bar from here to here. Because in theory, even if you are pretty much underneath it, when you unrack it, you're going to start over your shoulders anyway. So you should never hit that rack, regardless of what you do. And again, it all depends on try and error more than anything else. Because again, your big problem, when you're heavy, is you're right down here. Sometimes takes it off for you, it's great, but you've got to travel so far to get there. And again, like I said earlier, if your racking height or starting point is a bit off, it will fuck your setup up. Like if you've got to go and reach back and get it, you try and practice, you're going to have to move to try and go and get that bar, and your setup's now gone from good to okay. So again, it'll be a little bit of try and error, figure out how far you can go back that gets you into the right spot, but figures you in a good arch at the same time. Right, so yeah, again, this, like I said earlier, this whole bench more than anything, actually, it's a little bit more of a follow the list, but you might not, if you look at the person next to you, if all you look at the person next to you right now and did it benching when looks different to mine, as long as you're all doing the same thing, you might end up in different spots, different arches, feet further and back, or grip wider apart, but you're all doing the same concept. But it's just a little bit individual from person to person, purely because of the fact, obviously you've all got different length arms, more mobility in your spine, more mobility in hip flexors, like there's a lot of factors in this. So you can't be as blasé and say, oh, do this, do that, because it's not the way it's going to work. It's going to be a little more generic, a little bit more individual from person to person. I'll leave you on honesty. Q&A time. Is anyone got any question about bench pressing?
Yes, diagonal bar path.
Yeah.
When it gets heavy, it just seems to push it straight up, because when it starts coming back, it feels off balance. And
Fine. So all it'll basically mean is it'll mean your elbows are slightly further out more than they need to be. Or like I've done with you before, if your grip was a little wider apart. So for example, if I'm benching, if I match the bar and start over here, which is where it should be, and I go down and my elbows are flared outwards, tendency is to press in the direction of your elbows. So tendency means to go over here. If I start at the top and think, right, tuck my elbows in more than I usually would, when I hit the bottom, because my elbows are pointing back that way, chance that when I lock my arms out, it's going to go that way anyway. If that makes sense? So if you get to the bottom, your elbows are flared out at the bottom. When they're in one line, one line they're pointing in is that way. So you press that way. If you're up here, you think, right, elbows tucked right in as far as I can when I hit the bottom, my elbows are pointing back that way. So when I lock my arms out, whatever happens, it's still going to go back that way. But I do agree, they get to the point where you press it back too far and then you go back over your head in the first place. So it's not quite as extremely diagonal as you're imagining. It's a bit more like this, rather than like a full diagonal, wing it back over your head. It's more like that over there, it's going to be more diagonal. Just in your head, think about, right, when I hit the bottom, where are my elbows? My elbows are pointing up towards the ceiling in line my wrists. That's where it's going to go. If my elbows are just tucked slightly more pushing back where I want to go, chance where you lock your arms up, they'll go that way.
It feels like it's going straight up.
Yeah. So again, most times when you do it, it doesn't look like it is. But basically, it's one of the things where, again, this is the whole arm length thing. Like, it's more obvious. People have got long ass arms. When I do a bench presses, it takes a long time to get from A to B. So it looks more obvious if I do it wrong. Someone with like shorter arms, like, it's not going to make that big a difference. So what you do, in your head next time, you think, right, at the bottom, are my elbows pointing up with my wrist, or are they pointing back for them to go? How do you fix it? Right.
So it looks as though you're trying to chuck it onto the rack.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Don't do that though, but yeah. In your head, try and imagine that. Basically, that line will be, if you imagine, here's my shoulders, here's my chest, I'm trying to make that line as short as I possibly can is the idea. And again, short bar path in that percent isn't to do a big loop, isn't to go straight up and down, it's to make the bar path. Again, hence why I'd like for those of you to stand from the side and watch me. Basically, the bar should be doing more of this angle right here. Again, it takes practice, like I said to Steve, it's not going to be a really extreme. It's not you're trying to wing it back towards the rack, you're trying to press it back to where you started is the idea. Starting point should be, if you're laying down, like I said earlier, up on there, joints stack over each other. So when I start at the top, I should be able to, when I start over my chest, from a line from my wrist, elbow and shoulder now is in one line. I should, in theory, be able to hold this like this forever, because everything's stacked over each other. I should be able to stay here the whole time. And then it's going to be when I get to the bottom, my joints are now stacked still, but they're pressing in that direction. So they're going to be stacked looking in that direction rather than up. So they're not going to be stacked under here, so I press out over here. They're going to be tucked in and pressing back where I want to go. So you can press it back to where you started. So maybe your chest, back to where you started. And again, it's going to take a little bit of practice, but again, as long as you try and imagine where your joints are always lined up, you should be fine.
Is it worth doing the, when we come into a session, doing the level 1 stuff again, just to practice technique, rather than always doing the...
Okay, no, because...
Well, that's a good question.
Sure.
Good choice.
That's the answer. No. No. So when it comes to benching, what I would say is the issue. Oh, this is the wrong word. What can be the issue with option number 1 is the rest you get. Like, even if you got to do more extra practice, it's great. But I'd much rather you have time to set something up, get yourself ready, rather than I've got to go again. So I'd rather you still do option number 2, but don't focus on the weight necessarily. Think, right, if I'm doing pause stuff. Variation work is the absolute best time to practice technique stuff because it makes you have to do it. And what I would do is just keep the weight right down and think, right, can I make every rep from rep 1 to rep 100 look exactly the same? Different option number 1 is, by the time you've got yourself set up, done your setup, unrack it, done your tempo back in, you're going to look up, you're going to have 20 seconds, you've got to do exactly the same thing again. I'd much rather have a bit more rest in between, get every setup looking the same rather than route through it. Squats are a prime example. If you put something under the bar, take your tempo back again, you're going to think, oh, fuck, I'll go again. And chances are your form's going to get worse the more tired you get. Ironically, this is what a process is. Efficiency by definition means you're trying to put less effort in. If If you've got to put effort in by being the volume through the roof, your form's going to break down at some point. If you've got a big rest in between, the weight almost feels easy. That's what I want. I want every rep to feel like it's easy is the wrong word to use, but I want to feel like it's relatively effortless is kind of the idea. And it's only going to happen if you do have good break in between as well.
So you can reduce the
Okay.
chipper.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Half that probably, yeah.
Why are you looking at me? I didn't write that on the board, that's all him. That's his doing this.
Yeah, but you.
Yeah. You're doing it, Sam, so
I'm open to bribes.
Right. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I saw your one max rep at some point this week. So
Yeah.
two things straight. A, it was very heavy. B, it's very controlled. So
Okay.
So what I feel like is like bring it down and just try and smash it out. But you were very just methodically like.
Okay,
So do you,
question.
so do you set yourself and then go for a specific step of routine? Could you almost it was just.
Lots of questions. Yeah. My rule with speed is you are trying to go as fast as your technique can allow. I find that if I go down and let the bar go, I find it really hard to control when it hits my chest. Like it hits a different spot or if something moves out of position. So for me, it feels like it's really slow in my head, that's as fast as I can go. If I go any faster now, I'll start getting to basically what happens to me is if I'm here, if I've got a really heavy barbell and I start over my chest, if I do that, I find that really hard to control. Wherever it hits me, it's going to hit me a different spot every single time, or my elbows flare out, my arch going hits me, crumples to the bottom. I find it really hard to control. So for me, I've always thought, right, everything else is tight, nice and slow, and then think, right, fast as I can on the way out. That's how I've always done it. So my rule's always been, go as fast as your technique can allow. Squats are the same, deadlifts are the same, benches are the same. If you can tolerate it and go back and up as fast as you can, form's perfect, fucking brilliant. Most people can't. People find that when they go really fast and the bar drops, it's really hard to stay with this if you let the bar be out of your control in the first place. So you might find just slowing it down by a couple of seconds actually, ironically, helps your bench press massively in the first place. Good question, mate. So yeah, rule is go as fast as your technique can allow. And again, as always, like this whole process is in general, you're only going to figure that out by trying it. If you can take a really slow rep and think, right, is that better, or can I do it faster than that? It's still the same position. If you can do it the same with two things, we did say 10 reps of 60 every single time. 110 was really fast and felt very hard. Then works one a bit slower, but felt easier. You're only going to figure it out by giving it a go. Any other questions?
Tim,
No.
just a general thing. I mean,
Go on,
you
you're
know,
right.
me and Steve do quite a bit of work on the floor
Yeah, yeah.
with presses and stuff like that, but we never do bench, and I think we'll have to start integrating that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the difference when you're doing a bench press at, say, 70, 80 kilos, but then you can only do maybe 25 on each arm?
Dumbbells.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So
What additional muscles are you using to do a bench other than your shoulders?
so it's not necessarily additional. It's stability. Like barbell, because the barbell is stable for you, all you've got to think about is getting the bar from A to B. There's no stability going on really, because the bar's not going to go anywhere. It's quite big, it's quite long, it's quite heavy. Obviously with dumbbells, when you're the first thing, it's trying to get fucking think where you want to start. Because you've got to kick them up, you'll get them started. It's really hard to start in the first place. You wasted a good couple of reps there already. And then when you're pressing, not only have you now got to think about, right, going from A to B, you've got to think of where they're going to go. Are they stable both sides of it? So it's not necessarily different muscle groups. Well, while I said technically, I suppose it is to a certain degree. It's more the stabilising stuff, technical terms, in your shoulder that basically makes it heavier because you've got to actually control the weight a lot more. So you'll always, unless you're some sort of freak, you'll always find bench press is easier to get a heavier weight on purely because the fact there's less involved. So basically, when you're in racket, you're ready to go already. Dumbbells, when you get heavy, trying to get them from A to B and start it. Jesus Christ, you wasted like 5 reps doing that in the first place. And then when you do it press as well. Exactly that. So this is the whole thing. Like, there's a lot more stuff going on bench press. And again, as always, the more variables you take away, the heavier you can go. With a bench press, because the bar's straight, because dumbbells, because barbell is already unracked for you, you've saved yourself 5, 10, 15 kilos doing that already. Let alone when you're doing the press, you've got to stabilise yourself at the same time. They're a very good addition to dumbbell, to bar pressing, because of the fact you've got stability working and you can get lower than a barbell. What I'd always say with the dumbbells especially is try and think of, that's probably something boring. When it comes to doing like accessory work outside of bench pressing or deadlifting and squatting, your goal with accessory work is to take yourself to places you can't get to with a barbell. Or take it to places you can't do with the actual full addition of it. A bench press, you get stuck here, obviously chest in the way. Dumbbell wise, try and actively think, right, can I get lower than that? Can I get stronger at the bottom bit that I can't get to with a barbell? If you're emulating the same thing over and over again, kind of bang head against the same wall, it's not going to change anything. Dumbbells, if you can try and get yourself lower than you can possibly get normally, when it carries over, you'll be more stable and hopefully stronger in that bottom bit in the first place. So it will never be the same. It's not a you thing, it's a very normal thing, like, don't worry.
And is there any particular accessory
Accessory
an accessory exercise, additional one that you'd say would be a good
So I like neutral grip a lot, when you tuck your elbows right in, because again it makes you get a lot deeper than normal.
Yeah.
I like anything shoulder pressy, technical terms again,
Yeah,
I like a lot. So dumbbell pressing or over pressing with a barbell is really, really fine. And also I like a lot of tricep work as well. A lot of people, myself included, now when the bar gets here, I'm like, fucking hell, it's not going anywhere still. That top bit of bench press is basically locking your arm out. You're better at tricep locking your arm out. In theory, benches is better off. So a lot more tricep work, a bit more neutral pressing, trying to get lower, and shoulder work is a good part of it as well.
Yeah.
And again, more importantly, practice it more often.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Like people ask us, oh, how do I get better at running or benching or squatting? Do more of it.
Yeah.
When you get better at a sport, do more of the sport. Don't just ignore it completely. If you want to get better at benching, do more of it. Even if it's like sub-maximal work at like 70%, get your technique nailed down, that's going to be way more beneficial than doing loads of stuff next door.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Cool, yeah. That's it. So yeah, again, what I'll probably do, because Josh obviously, inevitably, he's not here today recording it for us, which is great news. I'm basically going to put that in.
It's for my benefit.
Yeah.
It's for my benefit.
I've noticed, don't worry, it's freaking me out, but it's fine. So,
You might have to share it.
yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bench seminar and deadlift one in the group in that format. So you can go through that and have a read through it again. All I want you to basically, like I said to someone, I can't remember who it was earlier, if you just take a couple of things from this and apply each time, we'll do these hopefully like 2-3 times a year, hopefully. Every time you do one, if you can apply what feels like the biggest thing to you now, and you can make the little changes along the way. The most important ones, probably for the majority of you, will be actually using your legs and thinking about this. Everything else you can start to work on going out. I mean, the rack height and the grip width, you can work that out within a week because you play around with it and you figure it out for yourself. All the other stuff's more practice-based things, just getting used to doing it.
Is that bench press that bit out there? Does that fix? Is that a fix?
Sadly, yeah, the rack height's exactly as it is.
It's about right for me, but
Yeah, I want to see obviously which is great for me, but yeah, sadly it's fixed, mate. You can't change the height of it. But again, as I said to you guys before, if the room's empty, help yourself. That's what it's here for. Like
Yeah,
Sunday,
yeah,
for
yeah.
example, the room's empty, just do your own thing.
where's the
So-
light?
In that box, okay, I don't. In that box there is a white switch, but just to really confuse everyone, what'll happen is sometimes, I don't think I'm going to do it now, but if they're off and you turn them on, I'm fucking not going to do it now. But what happens is they fuse basically, and up here there'll be one, and good electricians, great. But basically, one of them will fuse. If you flick out the lights turn on. If you ever think I've turned it on but it's still dark, just look in that box and it'll be up. Our electrician was fucking spot on. Yeah. Didn't know what the fuck he was doing, but it's fine. Yeah. There's your answer. Yeah. Yeah. Apart from mugging electricians, any other questions?
Just a thought, and it's not really a question, but an interactive seminar would be
Yeah,
amazing.
everyone said
Yeah.
this. Yeah. So yeah, what I'm going to try and do next time I do this is basically been off Weekend Warrior, which we're pleased to know, and basically afterwards kind of like do like a, what do you call it, like a workshop, I guess?
Yeah.
Actually do it rather.
Yeah.
Again, I'm very aware, me talking through that's great,
Yeah.
but you're going to go away and go, what are you talking
Yeah,
about?
well,
Where
it's
we
actually
can-
not
But
too
also-
Yeah,
bad.
if we can do it as we go, or
Yes.
even now, if I go, right, there's 4 benches,
Yes.
have a go,
Yeah.
and you can at least put it in practice now and try and get used to doing it. That's my goal for next time. Yeah, don't worry, that's
Yeah.
kind of the goal, because I think I'm very aware that I've spoken for 50 minutes pretty much non-stop, and chance of remembering all of that is really slim.
But also, well, it's all fresh in
Exactly
your head.
that, yeah. Also, I can be here and go, right, do this, do that, rather than go, right,
Yeah.
just
Pippi, you got that all wrong.
you completely not like a word I said, lovely dude. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.